One of the unfortunate side effects of molding your holster with the curve in it instead of flat is that it makes it a little bit more difficult measuring distances and keeping everything straight and in line and right angles, etc. But to combat that, I've constructed this thing that I've used quite a bit with significant success over the years, with two right angles just put together with a piece of Kydex. So what I do is I draw two parallel lines using this tool, and then I mark on the ruler part, like one of the marks over here, let's say like 4 inches and 4 inches over here. And what that does is it helps keep everything square, so you don't have all of your eyelets on this side higher or lower than your eyelets on this side, so they're all square. After drawing the parallel lines and then leaving a mark so I can square everything, I have this little measurement tool that I made to make it easier, and I lay it on the lines and line up one of the holes somewhere with the line that I left, and then make my lines. Another thing I also do is, instead of taking the gun out and taking the two pieces separate and then putting back together, I mark all of my lines while the two pieces are still stuck together after the molding process, and I also drill all my holes while they're still stuck together. And what that does is it just makes it like a perfect matchup without any kind of room for error that you might have if you take the two pieces apart and then put them back together when you drill your holes. So now I've drilled out the holes on the Kydex very carefully initially, just to make sure that I can keep everything in a perfect line like it was drawn out. And then I've gone back through and I've reamed out the holes. That saves you trouble later, because sometimes the Kydex doesn't get reamed out enough when you first drill it and you can't get the eyelets all the way through. But anyways, so drill out the holes, be very careful first time through, and then ream out the holes again really quick. So this is the bit I use with a really sharp, fine point that is great for precision accuracy when you're drilling, which you really want. Otherwise, your drill bit might walk a little bit and your lines won't be nearly as straight. Also, it's got these cutting edges on the side, which once this establishes a guide point and starts biting into your Kydex, this starts cutting the holes, which is really nice and leaves a pretty nice drill hole, like so. But this is also after having run this bit. So after you drill and ream out each hole, get yourself a bit like this to go back in and get all the crap off the edges. And otherwise that stuff will interfere with your eyelets coming back together and your two pieces of Kydex sticking together. So next I'm just going to draw some basic lines to do a rough cut of the shape. So the next thing we'll do now is make the rough cuts. Just cut out the general shape that we're going to make the holster in, and then touch up the edges. After making the rough cuts of the general shape of the holster that I'm going to put it in, now I'm just going to sand off and kind of smooth up a lot of the edges. The way I do it is I put 4 eyelets in the 4 corners. I don't do anything to the back of it. I just leave them in there, and it just helps hold the Kydex pieces together while I do this, so I can do equal shaping. Now you can see that I've cut the holster into the basic shape that it will end up in. And I started out by using the bandsaw to cut the rough shape, and then for the simple edges, the flat edges, I used the sander to sand it down to where I want it to be. And then for some of the complex edges, like down here, around the light, I used the Dremel. And especially right down here, these are very complex edges and have to be done very carefully. I did this with a Dremel, and the whole time you have to be checking the fit of the gun with the holster while you're doing the dremeling out and making sure you're not taking too much or too little. A few very important edges that you want to pay especially close attention to are right here and right here. You want to make sure that there is a big enough gap right here for a guy with larger hands on the draw to get his hand in there. So you don't want this gap to be too small. Also, this edge right here and this edge right here, when you go to grab the gun to unholster it, it'll be, if you don't take enough off of these edges, it'll be riding on your finger every time you draw. And that's kind of poor form when you're making a holster, and that's the case. But also you don't want to take too much off, because this is one of the most vital parts too, is it covers the trigger and the trigger guard. So pay very close attention to these edges right here, the more complex edges. So the next thing that I'll do now is I'll go ahead and do the finishing of the edges, which is the sanding and preparation for mounting.